Yes.
Good evening to all of you, dear friends who are connected on Zoom, and thank you for this opportunity. Today, the topic for me is importance of Viriya in realizing the truth. Viriya. Now, actually, I think right at the outset, we need to understand how this Viriya has come about, the etymology, the beginning of Viriya as a word. Literally, Viriya means state of a strong human or manliness. That is what literally it means, state of a strong human or manliness. In Vedic literature, I trace this to say that it means heroism or virility. Heroism or virility is what Viriya means in Vedic literature. In Buddhism, Viriya means energy or exertion, which is a prerequisite to achieve liberation. Viriya is translated as a spiritual diligence and exertion, effort, energy, etc. It is one's attitude of gladly engaging in wholesome activities. Now here actually I want to re-emphasize the word gladly. One's attitude of gladly engaging in wholesome activities, and it doesn't mean just engaging in wholesome activities. Viriya also helps accomplishment of wholesome and virtuous actions that are prerequisite to attain nirvana. So, I mean, here, when we talk about realizing of truth, we mean attaining nirvana. Now, I think it's important for us to first understand what Viriya means and where it occurs, because Viriya in Buddhism occurs in many places with many meanings. Now, Viriya occurs as one of 5 spiritual faculties. Of the 5 spiritual faculties, Viriya is one. Then it is also one of 5 powers, because in Buddhism we have 5 powers, what we call balas, and it is one of them. Then it also occurs as one of six perfections in Sanskrit tradition, which is called the Mahayana tradition. In Mahayana tradition, unlike Theravada tradition, there are only 6 perfections, and Viriya is one of them, because in Theravada tradition there are 10 perfections, Dasa Paramita. And in Mahayana tradition, it's higher paramita, 6 perfections, and it is one of them. Then it is also, okay, it is one of 10 perfections in Pali tradition. Pali tradition means Theravada tradition, what we basically practice. Then it also occurs as one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Viriya is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. To achieve enlightenment, Viriya is necessary, and it is one factor out of the 7 factors. Then it also occurs as one of the 11 virtuous mental factors in Abhidhamma of the Mahayana tradition, or what we call Sanskrit tradition. Then it is also one of the omnipresent wholesome factors within the Abhidhamma course of the Mahayana tradition. Then again, it is one of the path factors in Noble Eightfold Path, Samma Virya, Samma Vayama, right effort. So it occurs as one of the path factors in Noble Eightfold Path. Then ninth occurrence is one of the 4 conditions required to achieve worldly progress, Uttana Sampada, energetic striving or persistent effort. It is also called in English consummate in initiative. So these are the places where Viriya occurs. So I think it is important for us to understand that it has wide meanings, and it occurs in many places in many contexts. So that's the first thing I wanted to highlight to the audience here. So, but for the purpose of this discussion, I don't think we can discuss Viriya as occurring in all these 9 instances or in 9 areas. I don't think that's possible because the time will not permit, and I am not actually qualified or conversant enough to talk about all these areas. But I have chosen 5 areas to speak about as far as Viriya is concerned. So today I am going to talk about Viriya in the context of as it occurs as a spiritual faculty. Then I am going to talk about it as one of the 5 powers, and then I am also going to talk about Viriya as fifth of the 10 perfections in Pali tradition. Actually, I won't be able to speak about Viriya as one of the 6 perfections in Mahayana traditions because I am not conversant with it. And then I will also talk about Viriya as one path factor, and also that is in the Noble Eightfold Path, and also one of the 4 conditions required to achieve worldly progress. So those are the 5 areas I am going to focus on. So firstly, I think it is important to understand Viriya as a spiritual faculty. Now, spiritual faculties are also called Pancha Indriya in Pali. These called Pancha Indriya that are essential for spiritual progress. Pancha Indriya is essential for spiritual progress. Now, this is different from 5 sense faculties because sometimes some tend to confuse Pancha Indriya with 5 faculties. 5 faculties are not Asakananasya Diva Sariraya. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body different from 5 spiritual faculties of Pancha Indriya. Now, according to Edward Conze, a Buddhist scholar, he says spiritual progress depends on the emergence of 5 cardinal virtues. That's how he attaches importance to Pancha Indriya. Now, what is this Pancha Indriya? Pancha Indriya are, one is faith. Faith means confidence or saddha. Now, it is very important to understand that faith is not just faith. Just faith is actually meaningless. To me, it doesn't have meaning. Now, of course, Ms. Jayasekera, I must say that, as I always say, this is my understanding and this is how I interpret, and you, of course, can have different interpretations. So we can discuss it. This is how I see it. So now, actually, faith, when I talk about faith or confidence, that confidence or faith should be through understanding, not through belief. Because some people have faith through belief, confidence through belief, which I think is political. But faith through understanding is what we need here, which is intellectual. Because Buddhist philosophy is a lot to do with the intellect. So if you have faith through understanding, then we can call it intellectual. But faith through belief is political, and it will not help you achieve progress. That I must reiterate. And then then vigor or energy is the Viriya as a spiritual faculty. Vigor or energy. Then the third spiritual faculty of Pancha Indriya is the mindfulness, what we call sati. And then the 4th is concentration, samadhi, and wisdom. So now what you can see that Pancha Indriya, in the Pancha Indriya, which is different from 5 sense faculties or sense organs. So it's faith, energy. Number 1 is confidence. Number 2 is Viriya. Then you need to have mindfulness, then concentration and wisdom. So what is important to understand is that same faculties are also called bala or powers, pancha bala or powers, when emphasis is laid on the fact that they are unshakable opposites. When emphasis is laid on the fact that they are unshakable opposites, they become balas. I'll explain what does that mean, what it means. Now, actually, in this, as in Pancha Indriyas, 5 spiritual faculties, faith is in Buddha's awakening. Buddha achieving enlightenment, that is where the faith is necessary. Confidence in that is necessary, but through understanding, as I said earlier. Then energy is necessary toward exertion of 4 efforts. 4 efforts we can discuss under 8 noble eightfold path. But energy is towards exertion of 4 efforts under Pancha Indriya. Then mindfulness is needed to focus on 4 Satipatthana. That is where mindfulness is needed. And then, as you know, concentration is needed to achieve jhana, absorptions. And then wisdom in discerning 4 noble truths. There are some contradictions also. As we go on, I will explain. Now, so 5 spiritual faculties are also called controlling faculties because they control their opposites. They control opposites. Why I say that is, now, faith controls doubt. Faith controls doubt, which is the opposite. Faith is needed to control its opposite, which is doubt. Then energy is needed to control its opposite, which is laziness. Then mindfulness is needed, sati. It is needed to control its opposite, heedlessness. Then concentration, samadhi, is needed to control its opposite, distortion. Then wisdom is needed to control ignorance. So that's why, when it is now, then you can see when the emphasis is laid on 5 faculties as controlling opposites, they become bala, because when these spiritual faculties are energized, when they are energized only, they are called powers. And one power is Viriya. So that is where, that is the second instance where Viriya occurs as a bala. Now, what it says is the power of faith. Faith needs to be energized to make it a power. Power of faith. Then power of energy. Energy has to be energized to make it a power. Then mindfulness also has to be energized, the power of mindfulness. Then concentration has to be energized to make the power, which is called power of concentration. Then wisdom has to be also energized to be called power of wisdom. Now, that is how spiritual faculties become balas, and that is how Viriya as a spiritual faculty becomes a bala or a power. So Viriya occurs in both places, which is very, very important. So then, so it's important to understand what Viriya is. Okay, it occurs as a spiritual faculty, then it occurs as a bala. So what is Viriya? So it is the enthusiasm or effort to gladly engage in wholesome activities. It causes one to accomplish wholesome and virtuous activities. Now, okay, our journey here in this lecture is to understand how important it is to realize the truth. So first we need to understand, okay, what Viriya is, and you know what is the role it plays. So it's important to have Viriya to accomplish wholesome and virtuous activities. And in Chanki Sutta, I think it is in Majjhima Nikaya, I'm not really sure, I haven't gone through it. But Buddha says exertion or striving is essential for final arrival at the truth. Now, that is where he specifically says where Viriya is essential, right? Effort, striving, exertion is essential for final arrival at the truth, which is the subject, which is the topic today. So in Chanki Sutta. So then the third area, third place where it occurs is Viriya as one of the 10 perfections. So 10 perfections start as generosity, virtue, renunciation, wisdom, and then we come to energy. Right? Dana, Sila, Nekkama, Panya, Virya. So in Anuruddha Sutta, in Anguttara Nikaya, Viriya is described as a quality of a great person. It's important to understand. That's why I said Viriya occurs in many contexts in our literature. So in Anuruddha Sutta, Buddha tells Anuruddha, Brahmin Anuruddha, that Viriya is a quality of a great person. It says actually, if you really go through it, it says there are 8 qualities of a great person. Because Dhamma is for one whose persistence is aroused, and it is not for the lazy. Dhamma is not for a lazy person. Dhamma is always for an energetic person, because only an energetic person will understand Dhamma. So that is why Viriya is necessary. Viriya has to be a quality of a great person if he were to understand Dhamma. So 8 qualities are important to understand. So 8 qualities are: he should be modest and not self-aggrandizing. So that is, he must be a modest person with modest living to understand Dhamma. Otherwise, he will not understand Dhamma. Then he should be content and not discontent. So that is also a quality. Then he should be reclusive and not entangled. Now in Anuruddha Sutta, Buddha describes this. Then he should be persistent and not lazy. That is where Viriya occurs. He should be persistent in his effort, not lazy, not giving up. Then he should have mindfulness established and not confused. And established mindfulness is necessary to be a great person in Anuruddha Sutta. Then mind is centered. Mind has to be centered and not uncentered. Then he should also be endowed with discernment and not weak discernment. The discernment should not be weak. Strong discernment. And then finally, he should enjoy non-objectification, and not for the one who enjoys objectification. So those are the 8 great qualities of a person, or the 8 qualities of a great person. And to be a great person, to be defined or described as a great person in Buddhism, that person essentially should have Viriya. Not giving up nature, fighting to the last drop of blood is essential, not giving up. So that is very, very important. Then exertion. Now Viriya, okay, it is easy to say that you have to be persistent in your effort. You should not be giving up. You should be, striving without giving up. It's easy to say, because when we say Viriya is essential to achieve or realize the truth, it's very easy to say Viriya is essential. But how do you sustain Viriya? Sustenance is important. Sustenance is the most important thing, because otherwise it will just come and go. You can't sustain. So this is also important thing to understand, because sustaining exertion also has to have certain conditions fulfilled. Without fulfilling those conditions, you can't sustain Viriya, and then you will not progress towards realizing the truth. Now, according to Anga Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, there is a sutta called Anga Sutta. There are 5 factors that sustain exertion. To sustain exertion, there are 5 factors. You have to keep in mind these 5 factors are essential, and you have to cultivate these 5 factors if you want to have exercise Viriya unfailingly. One is conviction in Buddha and his teachings. As I said, conviction should come through understanding, not through belief. So conviction in Buddha and his teachings is essential to sustain Viriya. Then he or she should be free from illness, discomfort, and that person should have good digestion, not too hot, not too cold, and moderate strength. He should not be weak. He should not be having weak faculties, nor should he have very strong faculties. Then when you have very strong faculties also, in I think it's in Arya Pariyesana Sutta, Buddha talks about the 9 qualities of a person. One is the strength, but here in Anga Sutta, Buddha says to sustain exertion, you have to be moderate strength and free of illness, discomfort. You have to have good digestion, not too hot, not too cold. Then he should be neither fraudulent nor deceitful. That is also essential to sustain virya. Then that person should keep his energy aroused for abandoning unskillful mental qualities. He should always make sure that he keeps his persistence aroused to abandon unskillful mental faculties and taking on skillful mental faculties. He should exert to take on skillful mental faculties. Then he should be endowed with discernment leading to arising of the goal. So those are the 5 factors that you need to sustain exertion. And then there is another sutta where Buddha talks about virya as an important thing. That's called Vitara Sutta. Actually, there are many Vitara Suttas, but this Vitara Sutta I am referring to is in Majjhima Nikaya. There is another Vitara Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya. But Majjhima Nikaya Vitara Sutta says virya is one among the 5 strengths for one in training. Actually, training, now here one in training is not for the recluses or the monks, but here one in training is a upasaka. Upasaka is the trainee. Here, actually in Mula Pariyaya Sutta is where upasaka is described as a trainee. So now actually for trainee, virya is described as 5 strengths needed. That is conviction, strength of conscience, strength of concern, strength of persistence. That's again virya, strength of persistence, and strength of discernment. So you can see Buddha has laid a lot of emphasis on virya in realizing the truth, achieving the goal. So all these places where virya occurs, he talks about why virya is important as a person to maintain, as a trainee. All these areas talk about virya as a very important factor. Then the 4th area we talk about is one of the 8 path factors in the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the right effort under Panya group or the wisdom group. It's a first factor of concentration, Samma Vayama, and it occurs under wisdom group. Because actually now here it is important to understand why virya occurs in the wisdom group, and that is because actually Buddhist teachings lay, although we sometimes think when you say sila samadhi prajna, sila is virtue and then concentration wisdom. Sometimes we tend to think actually Buddhist philosophy lays a lot of, the most important emphasis on sila or virtue. But there are different thoughts on this. Now, I don't know whether I have spoken about this before, but there is this Gilana Sutta. I don't know whether you have heard, maybe you have heard Gilana Sutta. There are actually 11 Gilana Suttas in Nikaya text. Actually, but there is one Nikaya, one Gilana Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, where now this is important to understand in the context of Viriya, why it is occurring as part of Panya or wisdom, because actually once a monk was very ill, and Buddha visits him. Buddha visits this very ill monk who was actually on his deathbed. And then Buddha goes and asks him whether his pain is increasing or decreasing. And then this ill monk is saying, Lord, my pain is increasing. Then Buddha asks, okay, your pain is increasing. Is it because you have a mental, you regret that you broke your virtue? Because your virtue has broken, you broke your virtue, and it is playing up in your mind, and that is why your pain is increasing. Then he says, no, there is nothing like that, but my pain is increasing. And he says it's worsening. And he says, awakened one, I didn't realize, my understanding is that your teachings don't focus so much on sila or virtue. Then Buddha asked him, okay, if the focus is not on sila, where do I focus? Where have my focus been? What is your understanding? Then this monk says, my understanding is your teachings focus on wisdom more than sila. Now, that is not to say you should not be virtuous, right? Now, please don't misunderstand this. It doesn't mean to say that you should not be virtuous. But Buddha says that when he says, my understanding, the awakened one, that the focus is on panya or wisdom, then Buddha says, yes, you have understood the doctrine. You have understood the doctrine. Because panya, wisdom, plays a bigger role than virtue in realizing the truth. So that is why it is very important. Not to say virtue is not important or it's secondary, but the emphasis should be on panya. You should have the wisdom to understand how important it is. That's why I think in Buddha in one occasion says silava hoti nacha silamaya. I think I have said that, which means the Buddha says be virtuous but don't be a prisoner of virtue. You should not be a prisoner of virtue. You should be virtuous but shouldn't be a prisoner of virtue. So anyway, leave that side. So then we going back to this Viriya as a path factor. This is concerned with training of the mind with right effort. That is specific attention as a factor in the factor of the path that requires energy and exertion. So 4 aspects of right effort, as you know, the effort to prevent an unarisen, unwholesome state from arising. That of course you are very familiar with what right effort is, but I will still repeat. Then number 2 is abandon the arisen unwholesome states. That is the right effort is needed to abandon unarisen unwholesome states. Then Viriya is necessary, or effort is necessary to develop unarisen wholesome states you need to develop. And for that you need persistence, you need effort. And then you also need effort to strengthen and cultivate arisen wholesome states. So those are the four path factors for which you need Viriya. Now then, ultimately, of course, I am not going to go into it. In Vyagapatya Sutra, as the last item, we have this 4 factors of 4 conditions of worldly progress, which are Uttana Virya, Uttana Sampada, Arakshana Sampada, Kalyana Mitra Sampada, and Samajivikata. So striving, protection, good friends, and balanced living. And here striving is basically Buddha says, okay, how it occurs in Pali literature, is Buddhist literature, is that in especially Vyagapatya Sutta or Digajanu, what he says is, what does it mean to be consummate in initiative? There is a case where a lay person, by whatever occupation he makes his living, whether by farming or trading or cattle tending or archery or as a kingsman or any other craft, is clever and untiring at it. Clever and untiring at it, the emphasis. He should be clever in it and untiring at it. Endowed with discrimination in its techniques. He should understand how to discriminate, what are the techniques, what are the good techniques, what are the bad techniques, what are the strong techniques, weak techniques, then enough to arrange and carry it out. This is called being consummate in initiative. Now, in day-to-day life or in business life, this is exactly what we do in business, through programs like continuous improvements, total productive maintenance, 5 A's, modern, all these modern techniques are to ensure that people put in persistent effort, untiring effort to improve things, to understand situations, to improve operations. So that is where untiring effort, untiring striving is important. Then, so that is Viriya. So then what is meant by realizing the truth? Now we spoke about Viriya. Now the topic is the importance of Viriya in realizing the truth. So what is Viriya? But now for this discussion, I am not going to complicate it too much. My understanding, my simple understanding of realizing the truth, which is attaining nirvana, is stop forming 5 aggregates. If you stop forming 5 aggregates, you have achieved nirvana, because there is no rebirth. So for me, that is the most easiest way to understand nirvana. Stop forming 5 aggregates. Now there, of course, to stop forming, now actually that is the spiritual journey of a person. Spiritual journey of a person is towards stop forming 5 aggregates. Now that is clear. So if you can stop formation of 5 aggregates, ear, nose, eye, tongue and body, if there is no 5 aggregate, there is no person. So now to achieve that, of course, we need to understand 3 characteristics. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatma, right? And then the noble truths, 4 noble truths we need to understand. Then we need to understand dependent co-origination and the noble eightfold path. Now, finally, the path leading to stop formation of 5 aggregates is the noble eightfold path, that is where Viriya occurs, because without Viriya, you can't stop forming 5 aggregates. Now, I want to draw your attention to one point here, which may be a little controversial, but I want to draw your attention to this fact. Now, say we understand 3 characteristics. To realize the truth, it's important to understand 3 characteristics. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatma. Right? And then by understanding Anicca, Dukkha, Anatma, you understand 4 noble truths. Suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, way to end suffering. Now here, suffering, of course, we understand, difficult to define in English, but unsatisfactoriness or whatever, suffering. Then the cause of suffering here in 4 noble truths is the desire or tanha. That is the cause of suffering. First cause of suffering is the root cause of suffering in 4 noble truths is tanha, the greed or desire. So discernment or prajna is called understanding the 4 noble truths. Now, then you come to dependent co-origination, because 4 noble truths is also linked to dependent co-origination. Now, dependent co-origination also talks about ending suffering, how to end suffering. 4 noble truths is also talking about how to end suffering. But there is a difference between 4 noble truths and dependent co-origination. What is the difference? In Four Noble Truths, cause of suffering is greed or desire. But in dependent co-origination or Paticca Samuppada, what is the cause of suffering? Cause of suffering there is not tanha. Cause of suffering there is ignorance. Why this difference? In one place, the cause of suffering is desire or greed or tanha. In another place, cause of suffering is avijja. Avijja is also not understanding Four Noble Truths. So actually, this Austrian Buddhist philosopher, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Erich Frühlhauner. Erich Frühlhauner, Austrian Buddhist philosopher, argued that Buddha had second thoughts on Paticca Samuppada. He was thinking twice whether that is the best way of describing it, because he could not understand. A lot of scholars don't understand why in one place Buddha says tanha is the cause of suffering and in another place avijja is the cause of suffering. Now in Vishuddhi Magga, actually Venerable Buddha Ghosha deals with it in a very, very diplomatic way, saying actually avijja and tanha are the two sides of the same coin. And he says avijja causes tanha, tanha causes avijja. Ignorance causes desire, desire causes ignorance. That is how he overcomes this question of the cause of suffering being different in Four Noble Truths and Paticca Samuppada. So I think it is important to understand that there is a discussion point there. I don't want to call it an anomaly, right? Please don't get me wrong. I don't want to call it an anomaly, but there is a discussion point there, which has been subject to debate by Buddhist scholars. So finally, now I don't wish to go into explain the 12 links of dependent co-arising, like Paticca Samuppada, and actually to understanding Paticca Samuppada is very difficult. Is very difficult. Although a lot of people think it's easy to understand Paticca Samuppada or dependent co-arising, it is extremely difficult to get a good grasp of it. Actually, Buddha himself told Venerable Ananda in, I think, Mahanidana Sutta is where Paticca Samuppada occurs. And here Venerable Ananda goes and tells Buddha it's very clear and it's very easy to understand dependent co-arising and how it works. But Buddha says point blank, Venerable Ananda, he says, Venerable Ananda, don't say so. It is not easy to understand Paticca Samuppada as you say. It is very difficult to understand. You have to really focus and make effort to understand dependent co-arising and how it works. Actually, if you look at Buddhist arts also start with this Dhamma Chakra, wheel of Dhamma. Buddhist literature says actually wheel of Dhamma, that is Dhamma Chakra, was first drawn by Venerable Sariputta. That's where actually the first reference to Buddhist art is. Venerable Sariputta drew the 12-link Paticca Samuppada in a wheel, and by drawing that wheel only, he explained how these links work in the cycle of samsara. Actually, Dhamma Chakra represents Paticca Samuppada, which is essential. Understanding of Paticca Samuppada is essential to realize the truth really. Because those how to cut off links is difficult to understand, and that is where you have to put your effort. And that is why right effort is coming as a very important factor in the Noble Eightfold Path. And that is why it is in that group of Panya. So that's all what I have to say. And if you have any questions, I'll be only too happy to answer. I don't know whether I did justice to this topic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.